Two masked men let themselves into the home of a sick 80-year-old widow. The job is simple. Hurt her badly enough that it looks like an accident and let a small town write the rest of the story itself. 10 minutes later, one of them is unconscious on the floor with an oxygen tank standing over him. The other is running into the dark with a fresh bullet in his shoulder. It starts in Bighorn Ridge, a small town buried deep in Montana, where a cranky old lady runs her usual errands: the pharmacy for her medicine, the corner store for a couple boxes of beer, and everywhere she goes, she drags along the little oxygen tank her failing lungs depend on. As far as this town knows, Ellen Cole is a bad-tempered widow slowly running out of time on a ranch outside of town. That suits her perfectly. The sheriff doesn't look at her twice. Neither does the developer who wants her land, or the men already circling it. Not one of them has any idea what's living out on that property. At that same store, Sheriff Winston catches a girl shoplifting. Her name is Abby Cochran, and the food stuffed under her coat isn't a snack run. Her dad drank himself into a grave not long ago. She has no family left, and nothing holding her here. The plan was to grab enough to survive the trip and leave Bighorn Ridge forever. Winston lets it slide. Just a warning, and an order for his young deputy, Henry Darr, to drop her at the town line. Darr tries to make conversation on the ride out. He gets stonewalled every time. As far as Abby is concerned, this town and every badge in it can stay in the rearview mirror. He drops her at a highway gas station, and trouble finds her almost immediately. Two local creeps named Kyle and Dwayne spot a girl looking for a ride, and they come over with an offer she can't refuse her way out of. She tells them to leave her alone. They keep crowding in, treating her refusal like an opening bid. Then a truck door opens nearby, and out steps the beer-buying grandma from the store. Ellen says she'll take the girl instead. The two men move to block them. Worst decision either of them has ever made. In about 6 seconds, both are groaning on the pavement, dropped by an old woman who barely seemed to move. Abby can hardly process what she just watched. She mumbles a thank you and gets in the truck. On the road, she lays out her plan. Head for Mexico because she's always dreamed about seeing Machu Picchu. And Ellen points out, gently, that Machu Picchu is in Peru. That one correction tells you everything about both of them. The kid is chasing a dream she can't find on a map, and the grandma knows her world geography a little too well. Instead of dumping her at the highway, Ellen drives Abby home to a ranch sitting right up against an enormous construction site. Nobody's hitting the road, she says, until they've eaten a real dinner and slept in a real bed. Abby pushes back. Abby stays, and dinner turns into a conversation neither of them saw coming. Because Ellen knew Abby's father. After Ellen lost her husband, he used to come by and help around the place. To her, he wasn't the town punchline. He was a friend, so Abby fills in the rest. The drinking started when a developer named Duke sent crews out to build a dam. That creek was her father's favorite place in the world, and watching the project tear it apart broke something in him. In the end, they pulled him out of the water at that dam. The official version was that he went in to end it all. Abby says she's done with this town. She wants to see the world. Ellen's answer lands harder than she expects. Wandering is fine, but it doesn't mean much without a place worth coming back to. Then she takes the edge off with a joke about the two of them being a matching set of orphans. For one night, the grief in that kitchen gets a little lighter. The quiet doesn't survive the morning. A limo rolls up, and out steps Richard Duke himself with his enforcer, Mitch Clay, a step behind him. Duke wants Ellen's ranch as the centerpiece of his resort, and he's come to buy it 3 different ways. A fat check, her pick of any house in Duke Estates, VIP status for life. She turns down all 3. He leans harder, so she spells it out. As long as there's breath in her body, nobody is buying this land at any price. Duke gets back in the limo and gives Clay one instruction. The woman goes. How it happens is Clay's problem. That evening, Ellen quietly loads Abby's backpack with everything she'll need on the road, and she slips a hunting knife in with it. For cooking, she says. Abby doesn't know what to do with being cared about. It's been a while. A few hours later, 2 shadows let themselves into the ranch house. Kyle and Dwayne. And now we learn both of them are on Duke's payroll. The job is to injure the old lady and dress it up as a household accident. Dwayne starts sabotaging the staircase. The sound carries farther than he thinks. Ellen appears behind him and goes straight at him without a flicker of hesitation. Sick lungs and all, she takes him apart and knocks him cold with the oxygen tank she hauls everywhere. The noise wakes Abby, who runs headfirst into Kyle. A chase tears through the dark house until her hand finds a pistol stashed in a cabinet. One shaky trigger pull, and Kyle is out the door with a hole in his shoulder. The girl is left frozen, stunned by what she just did. Ellen settles her down and gives her one instruction: total silence. If anybody asks who fired that shot, the answer is Ellen. The cops show up the next morning and haul Dwayne away in cuffs. Except Sheriff Winston has almost no interest in the home invasion. He keeps circling back to that fight at the gas station, framing Ellen as the aggressor. Then his officers go through her barn and find 12 homegrown plants in a state where the legal cap is 4. She tells him it's her medicine. He tells her anything. Past 4 is a felony and intent to distribute is on the table, so the woman whose house was invaded overnight is the one leaving in handcuffs. Dar hates it. He arrests her anyway, which leaves Abby alone on the property. And while wandering the empty house, she stumbles onto its biggest secret. Underneath the basement, there's a concealed room. Inside is a whole other life, packed away in neat rows, an arsenal of guns, a stack of passports all carrying different names, and photographs of a young Ellen in uniform. The harmless widow who cooked her dinner is suddenly someone else entirely. Down at the station, Dwayne walks past her cell and mutters a threat about her house. Within the hour, somebody has posted his bail. Ellen stays behind bars. From her cell, she keeps pushing Winston to put officers on her property, telling him flat out that the break-in traces back to Duke. He waves it away, so she calls him what he is, a man on the developer's payroll, and she asks whether he intends to do his job at all. His answer is no. Meanwhile, Kyle and Dwayne are stacking gasoline cans in the bed of a truck. The next visit to that ranch isn't meant to leave a house behind, but Dar's conscience won't quit. He carries the oxygen tank down to Ellen's cell and finds her sprawled on the floor, fighting for air. The second he's inside trying to help, the trap springs. His gun leaves his holster, the door slams with him behind it, and Ellen walks out. One officer gets folded to the ground by his own finger. A deputy pulls a taser, and both she and her colleague end up on the wrong end of it. A sick 80-year-old just walked herself out of police custody. She hurries home, presses the truck keys into Abby's hands, and tells her to run before the cops arrive. Abby won't budge. She's not walking away from the one person who's ever been in her corner. The patrol cars roll in, and Ellen meets them out on her own porch. No running. No hiding. Winston levels his weapon at her. A second later, that weapon is in her hands, and he's flat in the dirt while his entire department watches. The humiliation flips a switch in him, and he calls for heavy firepower. Dar begs him to cool down because Abby is still inside and a firefight could kill her. So he goes in himself, unarmed. She won't move. She's convinced they'll hurt Ellen the second she surrenders. What she does instead is show him her father's research. She admits she used to write her dad off as unstable. She's been rethinking that. On a map, she traces a line through a string of disasters at neighboring ranches. One property burned to cinders and got labeled a brush fire. Another had its entire herd wiped out by botulism, a disease with no business appearing in that region. And shortly after, that owner decided to end his own life too. Every ruined ranch sat exactly where Duke wanted to build. Coincidence is Dar's first guess. The guess doesn't survive the pattern. Then one more detail seals it. Abby always assumed Dar was the one who found her father in the water. He tells her no. He only arrived first as a responding officer. The discovery was made by men working for Duke. Neither of them says the next part out loud. Those men didn't stumble across a body, they delivered one. Out front, this stops being police business. Clay arrives with truckloads of hired muscle, and suddenly the county sheriff is negotiating with a private enforcer. Winston asks for a window to get the girl out. He's given 3 minutes. Then he orders Dar over the radio to march Abby outside. Dar refuses. He wants to know why Duke's private soldiers are running a police operation. What he gets back is silence, and Winston waving Clay's men forward. The sheriff just traded away his own deputy. Inside, Dar is still hunting for a version of this where his boss is decent underneath. Ellen settles the argument by dropping him with one clean hit, because a cop who still believes in the system is a walking casualty in what's coming. They haul him downstairs, tie him up, and seal both him and Abby in the concealed room. Then Ellen goes to work, wiring her house with traps, moving with the ease of somebody who has done all of this before. Because while the siege takes shape, an officer digging into Ellen's past finds a file that's almost empty. She surfaced in Bighorn Ridge in 1999. Before that, there is nothing. It's the tiger tattooed on her arm that finally cracks it open. A photo goes to the FBI, and what comes back lands like a bomb. Ellen Cole is Russian-born, a former KGB operative who once worked under the alias Sword and Shield. Fighting was never a hobby for this woman. Killing was the job, and an armed crew is currently closing in around her house. Behind the property, Dwayne makes a discovery that ruins his night. Rows of practice targets, not a single hole outside the bullseye. His confidence starts dying right there in the grass. The crew's first move is a vehicle ram at the front of the house, and it fails when one shot blows out the tire. After that, the yard turns hostile. Trap after trap snaps shut in the dark, and Dwayne's nerve gives out completely. He bolts into the trees and abandons the crew. So Clay has his men hose the building down with gunfire, and when Kyle shoves the front door open, a rigged charge throws him across the yard. But getting inside doesn't save them. It delivers them to her. Ellen moves from darkened room to darkened room, erasing intruders one at a time, stripping each dead man's weapon and spending it on the next. Every kill costs her exactly 1 round. Downstairs, a mercenary smashes his way in just as Abby frees the deputy, firing the moment he's through. Dar grapples with him and starts losing, and it's the girl who ends it, swinging a baseball bat hard enough to drop the man where he stands. Not bad for a kid who was lifting snacks a few days ago. But upstairs, the fight finally outruns Ellen's body. Her breathing collapses mid-battle and she goes scrambling for the oxygen. Clay catches her exposed and opens fire, hitting her as she dives for cover. She empties the magazine while he shields himself with a fallen man from his own team. And then her gun clicks empty. He hauls her up, half in awe of her, telling her she must have been unstoppable in her younger years. The pistol comes level. He offers her a final request. She tells him to aim for the head. Then a sound behind him makes Clay spin, and he's staring down the barrel of Dar's gun. Roped to a chair, the enforcer gives up the piece nobody understood. The county was going to strip Ellen of that land within a year anyway. So why pay for a murder you could simply wait out? Because Duke is buried in debt to some very dangerous people, and the resort has a hard deadline. Finished by next summer, or Duke is a dead man. A courtroom timeline doesn't save him. Only the old woman disappearing right now does. But Ellen's lungs keep sliding, and she needs her medicine fast. In the scramble to help her, a wine opener slips off the table. Abby never notices. Clay does. With the women in the other room, he picks at the wound of Winston's betrayal until Dar snaps and closes the distance. That's the opening. The hidden steel goes into him. The gun changes hands. By the time Ellen and Abby come running back, flames are climbing the walls and Clay is dragging the wounded deputy out as a human hostage. Ellen empties her gun after him. He still gets clear. And his men ring the burning building and keep shooting, making sure nothing inside stays alive. But there's one thing Clay doesn't know about that house. Down in the concealed room, they grab what supplies they can and slip into a tunnel. Ellen dug years ahead of this exact nightmare. Outside, the men watch the fire finish the job, satisfied nobody made it out. And from the tree line, Ellen watches that same fire eat the first real home she has ever had. Something in her breaks along with it. On the road out, the last walls come down. A homeless kid on Russian streets scooped up by the KGB and drilled into a killer while she was still a child. Then meeting her husband, and the two of them building something in Montana that finally belonged to her. Losing that house cuts deeper than any bullet she ever took. Taking Duke down requires proof, and Abby remembers where some might be because her father's old trailer still holds everything he owned. They tear through it, and buried in the clutter, they hit gold. Paperwork connecting the resort plan to every wrecked ranch on his map. Meanwhile, the man himself gets a phone call. The people in Russia holding his debt want a signature, delivered face to face. Out among the trees, the truth finally crushes Abby. She spent years treating her father like an embarrassment, judging him alongside everyone else in that town, and he was the only one who ever saw it clearly. Grief hardens into something else, and the two women agree that Duke is going to pay in a currency no courtroom deals in. Dar handles his own business, walking into Winston's office to tell him state troopers are already on the way. Then night falls, and word reaches Duke that the old woman survived the fire. Seconds later, his estate goes dark. Around the grounds, his security detail starts dropping man after man, as Ellen works through them the way she once worked through cities on the other side of the world. Dwayne, running on pure fear, stuffs his boss into a closet, hands him a pistol, and takes a post outside the door, shaking like a man guarding his own coffin. Across the valley, Abby is rigging the dam with explosives, and that's where Kyle finds her. He wants her to know something before he finishes her, and he makes it slow and cruel. Her father's death was his work. The beating he gives her is vicious, and it blinds him to the one thing that matters. Because riding in her waistband is the blade Ellen packed for her on that very first night. Abby sinks it into his gut and walks away, leaving her father's killer to bleed out beneath the dam his boss built. Back at the mansion, silence. Every guard is down. Duke hears movement outside the closet and loses it completely, firing blind through the wood until the pistol runs dry. The door opens on Ellen, untouched, gun raised. He braces for the end, and instead she tells him something worse. He isn't the reason she came. Clay is. The enforcer arrives moments later and Ellen lays out the terms. Burning her home made this personal. A single shot knocks the pistol out of his hand. And when he dares her to settle it barehanded, man to man, she takes the dare. Youth and size carry him early. What turns it is her thumb finding his eye. And when he comes at her with a knife, the blade gets reversed and planted in its owner. The man who torched her house dies on his own steel, which leaves Duke marched out into the forest for the finale. Ellen raises a signal across the valley. Abby presses the detonator, and the dam that started all of this comes apart in an avalanche of white water. His signature project gone in seconds. He's still spitting curses when a car pulls in and a man steps out, one of the Russian creditors, here for that signature. And the moment he lays eyes on Ellen, he lowers his head with real respect, the kind reserved for a legend. The two speak quietly in her mother tongue, while Duke grins, certain the visitor came here to handle her. He has it exactly backwards. Ellen hands the developer over, fully aware of the reception waiting for him overseas. And for a man like Duke, that ride is scarier than any bullet. Sometime after, the local paper is still reporting Richard Duke as missing, following the bloodbath at his estate. Winston's career is finished. The badge belongs to Dar now, who runs the department straight and still drops off Ellen's prescriptions in person. Before Abby heads out, she and the new sheriff trade a warm, unhurried goodbye at the door. And the last image is the two women packing their lives into her late father's trailer and rolling out of Bighorn Ridge, southbound at last, toward the real Machu Picchu, the one in Peru, 2 orphans on the road, and each of them finally has somebody to come home to. So here's what I keep turning over now that it's done. Other people shaped Ellen into a weapon when she was far too young to refuse. So when she picked that life back up by her own choice, was she sliding back into her past or taking charge of it for the very first time? Drop your take in the comments because I want to hear how you read her. And if quiet neighbors with dangerous histories are your kind of story, that next one is already sitting right there on your screen.